Dr. Sarah Chen adjusted her environmental suit as she stepped out of the research shuttle onto the alien soil of Kepler 442b. The morning sun cast long shadows across the purple grasslands that stretched endlessly toward distant mountains. After 3 years of traveling through space, she finally stood on humanity's first confirmed habitable world outside their solar system. The planet was beautiful, in ways Earth never was. Twin moons hung in the lavender sky, and crystalline formations jutted from the ground like natural sculptures. The air was breathable, though she kept her suit sealed as a precaution. Her scanner beeped softly, detecting no immediate threats in the area. Sarah was part of the advance team, a xenobiologist whose job was to catalog the planet's life forms before the main colonization fleet arrived. So far, they had discovered plants that seemed to glow with their own inner light, and insects that created complex geometric patterns in the air as they flew. But no large animals had been spotted yet. She walked carefully through the alien grass, her boots crunching on what looked like purple leaves but felt like soft crystals. Every few steps she stopped to take samples and photographs. The company back on Earth was eager for her reports, but Sarah took her time. This wasn't just about corporate profits or colonial expansion. This was about understanding a completely new form of life. Her scanner suddenly picked up movement about 200 meters ahead. Sarah crouched low and pulled out her binoculars. Through the purple vegetation, she could see something large moving with purpose. It wasn't the random movement of grazing or hunting. This creature was traveling somewhere specific. As she watched, the animal emerged from behind a cluster of crystal trees. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. It looked like a leopard from Earth, but larger and more magnificent. Its fur was a deep silver with spots that seemed to shimmer and change color as it moved. Most striking were its eyes, which were larger than any Earth cat's and held an intelligence that made Sarah's scientific mind race with possibilities. The creature stopped and turned its head directly toward her hiding spot. For a moment, their eyes met across the alien landscape. Sarah expected it to run or attack, but instead the animal simply studied her. There was something almost calculating in its gaze, as if it was trying to understand what she was just as much as she was trying to understand it. Then Sarah noticed something that made her heart sink. The creature was carrying something in its mouth, something small and motionless. As it came closer, she could see it was a smaller version of itself, probably its offspring. The little one's breathing was shallow and labored, and even from a distance Sarah could tell it was dying. The adult creature, who Sarah assumed was the mother, continued moving toward her position. This made no sense from a survival standpoint. Wild animals didn't approach unknown threats when they were vulnerable, especially when carrying injured young. Yet this creature was doing exactly that. Sarah slowly stood up, her hands raised to show she meant no harm. The mother stopped about 10 meters away and gently placed the dying cub on the ground. Then she did something that changed everything Sarah thought she knew about alien life. The mother creature looked directly into Sarah's eyes and made a sound that was unmistakably a plea. It wasn't just animal communication. There was something deeper in that sound, something that transcended species barriers. The creature was asking for help. Sarah felt her worldview shifting. First contact protocol said she should observe and record, maintain distance, and wait for the xenopsychology team to arrive. But those protocols were written by people sitting safely on Earth, not by someone standing face to face with a desperate mother watching her child die. The cub's breathing became even more shallow. Sarah could see its small chest struggling to rise and fall. Whatever was wrong with it, there wasn't much time left. The mother made that pleading sound again, and this time Sarah heard something else in it. Hope. This incredible creature somehow believed that Sarah could help. Sarah looked at her medical scanner, then at the dying cub, then back at the mother's intelligent silver eyes. Every scientific protocol told her to step back and document. But every human instinct told her to step forward and act. The mother seemed to sense her internal struggle. She gently nudged the cub closer to Sarah, then stepped back but remained close enough to protect her young if needed. The trust in that gesture was overwhelming. This alien creature, who had never seen a human before, was entrusting her most precious possession to Sarah's care. Sarah knelt down and activated her medical scanner, pointing it at the small creature. The readings were unlike anything in her database, but she could see patterns that looked familiar. The cub's vital signs were failing, but they weren't chaotic. Whatever was wrong, It seemed to be affecting specific systems in a way that reminded her of cases she had studied on Earth. The mother watched every movement Sarah made, her silver eyes tracking each gesture. There was no aggression in her posture, only desperate hope and remarkable trust. Sarah realized she was witnessing something unprecedented in human history, not just first contact with intelligent alien life, but first contact with an alien intelligence that was actively seeking human help. As Sarah began to understand what might be wrong with the cub, she also began to understand that this moment would define not just her own future, but possibly the future of human-alien relations on this entire world. The mother's trust was a gift, but it was also a test. How humanity responded to this plea for help would set the tone for everything that came after. The cub's breathing became more labored, and Sarah knew she had to make a choice. Follow protocol and watch a sentient being's child die, or risk everything to help and possibly create the foundation for peaceful coexistence between two intelligent species. She looked into the mother's eyes one more time and saw her own humanity reflected back at her. Sarah made her choice in that moment, pushing aside decades of training and protocol. She activated her emergency medical kit and approached the dying cub slowly, speaking in soft, reassuring tones that she hoped would communicate peaceful intentions across species barriers. The mother remained motionless but alert as Sarah knelt beside the small creature. Up close, the cub was even more beautiful than she had imagined. Its silver fur was incredibly soft, and the color-changing spots seemed to pulse weakly with its heartbeat. Sarah could see it was very young, probably equivalent to a few weeks old in Earth cat development. Her scanner revealed the problem almost immediately. The cub was suffering from what appeared to be severe dehydration and malnutrition, but there was something else. The readings showed an unusual energy pattern in its cellular structure, something that didn't exist in Earth biology. The cub wasn't just starving for food and water. It was starving for some kind of energy that Sarah didn't understand. "What do you need, little one?" Sarah whispered, more to herself than to the cub. She pulled out a portable analysis unit and took a small sample of the cub's saliva. The machine hummed quietly as it processed the alien genetic material. The mother watched this procedure with intense focus. Her head tilted in a way that suggested she was trying to understand what Sarah was doing. When the analysis unit beeped with results, the mother's ears perked up, as if she recognized the sound meant something important. Sarah stared at the readings in amazement. The cub's biological system was unlike anything she had ever seen. It had normal organic processes like digestion and circulation, but it also had a secondary system that processed electromagnetic energy directly from its environment. The color-changing spots weren't just for camouflage or communication. They were energy collectors like biological solar panels. The problem was clear now. The cub needed a specific wavelength of electromagnetic radiation to survive, something that was apparently abundant on this planet, but was being blocked by some kind of interference. Sarah looked around and noticed that the area they were in was surrounded by the crystal formations she had seen earlier. Her scanner detected that these crystals were emitting a low-level electromagnetic field that was interfering with the cub's energy absorption. Sarah looked at the mother and pointed toward the crystals, then made a gesture indicating they should move away from them. The mother's eyes widened, and she made a low sound that seemed to express understanding and agreement. She gently picked up her cub and began moving away from the crystal formations. As they walked together across the alien landscape, Sarah found herself in the surreal situation of collaborating with an intelligent alien species to save a life. The mother seemed to instinctively understand that Sarah was trying to help, and she followed Sarah's lead without hesitation. They reached an open area where Sarah's scanner showed clear electromagnetic readings. The natural energy field of the planet was strong here, unfiltered by the crystal interference. Sarah set up her portable medical equipment while the mother placed her cub gently on the soft purple grass. The cub was barely breathing now, its small body growing cold despite the warm alien sun. Sarah knew she needed to act fast. She pulled out her emergency medical synthesizer, a device designed to create basic medications and nutrients from available materials. If she could boost the cub's basic biological functions, maybe its natural energy absorption system would start working again. Working quickly, Sarah programmed the synthesizer to create a nutrient solution based on the cub's biological analysis. The machine drew materials from the soil and air around them, breaking down molecules and rebuilding them into what the cub's body needed. It was a risk using alien materials, but the cub was dying anyway. The mother watched every step of this process with fascination. When Sarah produced a small vial of clear liquid, the mother sniffed it carefully, then looked at Sarah with what could only be described as a questioning expression. "It's okay," Sarah said softly, knowing the mother couldn't understand her words but hoping her tone would communicate safety. "This should help." Sarah carefully administered the nutrient solution to the cub using a small feeding tube. The little creature was too weak to swallow on its own, but the liquid went down without resistance. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. The cub remained motionless, its breathing still shallow and irregular. Then, slowly, something beautiful began to happen. The color-changing spots on the cub's fur began to pulse more strongly. They started cycling through different colors, as if the cub's biological systems were awakening and beginning to process energy from its environment again. The mother noticed the change immediately and made a sound of excitement and relief. She moved closer to her cub and began grooming it gently with her tongue, encouraging it to respond. Sarah watched in amazement as the interaction between mother and child seemed to accelerate the healing process. Within an hour, the cub's breathing had stabilized and its spots were pulsing with vibrant colors. It still wasn't strong enough to move much, but its eyes had opened, and it was making small sounds in response to its mother's grooming. Sarah realized she was witnessing something unprecedented in human history. Not only had she successfully treated an alien life form, but she had done so through cooperation with another intelligent species. The mother's trust and guidance had been essential to understanding what the cub needed. As the sun began to set, painting the alien sky in shades of gold and purple, the mother looked at Sarah with an expression of unmistakable gratitude. She approached slowly and, to Sarah's amazement, gently touched Sarah's hand with her large paw. The gesture was clearly intentional, a deliberate communication of thanks across the vast divide between species. Sarah felt tears in her eyes as she realized the magnitude of what had just happened. This wasn't just about saving one small life. This was about proving that different intelligent species could work together, could understand each other, could help each other survive and thrive. But as beautiful as this moment was, Sarah knew it was just the beginning. The cub was stabilized but not fully recovered, and Sarah had just violated every first contact protocol in existence. Soon, she would have to explain to her team and to Earth what she had done and why. More importantly, she was beginning to suspect that this encounter was not random. The mother had sought her out specifically, had known somehow that Sarah might be able to help. That suggested a level of intelligence and possibly even advanced knowledge about humans that could change everything they thought they knew about this planet and its inhabitants. The alien night brought unexpected challenges. As the twin moons rose over the purple landscape, Sarah discovered that the electromagnetic environment of the planet changed dramatically after dark. The energy fields that had helped revive the cub were now fluctuating wildly, and the little creature began showing signs of distress again. The mother seemed to understand this problem instinctively. She moved her cub to different locations, testing each spot carefully before settling down. Sarah watched this behavior with growing amazement, realizing that the mother possessed a sophisticated understanding of her environment that went far beyond simple animal instinct. "You know exactly what you're doing, don't you?" Sarah murmured as she followed them to a small depression in the ground where the energy readings were more stable. The mother looked at her and made a soft sound that almost seemed like agreement. Then she did something that made Sarah's breath catch in her throat. Using her paw, she began drawing patterns in the soft soil. At first, Sarah thought it was random scratching, but as the pattern grew more complex, she realized she was watching deliberate communication. The shapes were geometric and precise, far too organized to be accidental. Some resembled the energy wave patterns Sarah had seen on her scanner. Others looked like star charts or maps. The mother was trying to tell her something important, something that required more than just sounds and gestures. Sarah pulled out her tablet and began recording the symbols, her excitement growing with each new mark. This was evidence of not just intelligence, but of abstract thinking and symbolic representation. The mother paused occasionally to check on her cub, but she kept returning to her drawing, adding new elements with clear purpose. When the mother finished, she looked at Sarah expectantly. Sarah studied the pattern, trying to understand its meaning. Some of the symbols reminded her of the constellation chart she had studied during the journey to this planet. Others resembled the electromagnetic readings from her scanner. Then Sarah had an idea. She pulled up a star chart on her tablet and showed it to the mother. The creature's eyes widened with obvious recognition and excitement. She pointed with her paw to several stars on the chart, then to corresponding symbols in her drawing. "You're showing me where you come from," Sarah breathed in amazement. "But that's not just this planet. You're showing me other star systems." The mother made an affirming sound and began drawing again, this time creating a new pattern that looked remarkably like a timeline or sequence of events. She drew multiple star systems connected by lines with small figures that could only represent her species moving between them. Sarah's mind raced with the implications. These creatures weren't just native to this planet. They were travelers, possibly refugees or explorers who had come here from somewhere else. That would explain how the mother had known to seek help from Sarah. She might have encountered other intelligent species before, but the communication session was interrupted by Sarah's radio crackling to life. "Dr. Chen, this is base camp. Please respond with your status and location." Sarah looked at the mother apologetically and activated her radio. "This is Chen. I'm about 15 kilometers northwest of the landing site, conducting biological surveys. Everything is normal here. Copy that. We're tracking some unusual electromagnetic readings in your area. Are you experiencing any equipment malfunctions?" Sarah glanced at her scanner, which was indeed showing irregular readings due to the nighttime energy fluctuations. "Minor scanner interference, probably due to local mineral deposits." "Nothing serious." "Understood. Maintain radio contact and return to base camp before dawn. We have new directives from Earth and Commander Walsh wants to brief all team members." The radio went silent, leaving Sarah alone with her alien companions under the strange night sky. She knew she was walking a dangerous line. Every moment she spent with these creatures was another violation of first contact protocols, and every lie she told her team dug her deeper into trouble. But as she looked at the mother's intelligent eyes and the small cub who was alive because of their cooperation, Sarah couldn't bring herself to regret her choices. These weren't just animals to be studied and cataloged. They were people in every sense that mattered. The mother seemed to sense Sarah's conflict. She approached and gently touched Sarah's hand again, then pointed to herself, to her cub, and then to Sarah. The message was clear. They were connected now, bonded by the shared experience of saving a life. Throughout the night, the mother continued to teach Sarah about her species and their world. Using combinations of drawn symbols, sounds, and gestures, she explained that her people had once lived on a planet orbiting a different star. Something had happened there, something that forced them to leave and search for a new home. Sarah began to understand that what she had taken for natural crystal formations were actually remnants of some kind of technology. The electromagnetic interference wasn't natural. It was the result of damaged or abandoned equipment that the mother's people couldn't repair. This realization filled Sarah with both excitement and dread. If these creatures were refugees from another world, then humanity wasn't just making first contact with an alien species. They were encountering survivors who had lost their original home and were struggling to adapt to a new one. The cub's condition continued to improve as the night progressed, but it was clear that the little one would need ongoing care. The electromagnetic interference that had nearly killed it wasn't going away, and the mother's people apparently lacked the technology to fix it. As dawn approached, Sarah faced an impossible choice. She could return to base camp and report her discovery through proper channels, following protocols that would likely result in the creatures being treated as specimens rather than people, or she could continue working with them directly, using her human knowledge and technology to help them solve their problems. The mother seemed to understand the weight of this decision. She drew one final symbol in the dirt, a simple image that showed two different figures standing together, helping each other. Then she looked at Sarah with an expression that transcended species boundaries. Sarah realized that this wasn't just about saving one cub anymore. It was about proving that different species could work together as equals, that intelligence and compassion could bridge any gap between civilizations. She made her choice as the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon. Instead of returning to base camp, she would stay with the mother and cub, using her human ingenuity and technology to help them overcome the challenges they faced. It was risky, possibly career-ending, but it felt like the most human thing she had ever done. The mother seemed to sense her decision and made a sound of approval and gratitude. Together, they began planning how to help not just one small cub, but an entire species of displaced travelers find their place in the universe. Sarah spent the next day working with the mother to understand the full scope of the electromagnetic interference problem. Using her portable equipment and the mother's detailed knowledge of the local area, they mapped the extent of the crystal formations and their effects on the planet's natural energy fields. What Sarah discovered amazed her. The crystals weren't randomly scattered across the landscape. They formed a complex network that had once been a sophisticated energy management system. The mother's people had built this technology to regulate and distribute electromagnetic energy across their new world. But something had gone wrong. Through careful observation and the mother's symbolic communication, Sarah learned that a solar storm several months ago had damaged key components of the system. Without the ability to repair the advanced technology, the mother's people had watched helplessly as their energy distribution network began interfering with their natural biological processes. The cub wasn't the first to suffer. The mother showed Sarah to a nearby area where several small graves marked the loss of other young ones who couldn't adapt to the disrupted energy environment. The adult members of the species were strong enough to survive the interference, but their children were dying one by one. Sarah felt a burning determination rise within her. This wasn't just about one family anymore. An entire species was slowly facing extinction because they lacked the technical knowledge to fix their own life support system. She began analyzing the crystal formations with every piece of equipment she had. Her geological scanner revealed that the crystals were made of materials that didn't exist naturally on this planet. They were definitely artificial, grown or manufactured using technology far beyond current human capabilities. But while the technology was advanced, the problem was one that human engineering could potentially solve. The solar storm had created cascading failures in the network's control nodes. If Sarah could identify the damaged components and find ways to bypass or repair them, she might be able to restore the system's proper function. The mother watched intently as Sarah worked, occasionally offering guidance by pointing out areas where the energy readings were particularly problematic. Her understanding of the technology was intuitive rather than technical, but her insights were incredibly valuable. By midday, Sarah had identified 3 critical control nodes that were malfunctioning. The damage was too extensive for simple repairs, but Sarah realized she might be able to use her own equipment to create temporary patches. Her portable fusion generator, designed to power her research equipment, could potentially substitute for one of the damaged nodes. But as she worked on the technical solutions, Sarah's radio crackled to life again. This time the voice was Commander Walsh himself. "Dr. Chen, this is an order. Return to base camp immediately. We have search teams preparing to look for you if you don't respond within the hour." Sarah looked at the mother, who seemed to understand that Sarah was being called away. The alien creature's expression showed concern, not just for her own family but for Sarah's well-being. "I'm experiencing some equipment difficulties," Sarah lied. "My position tracker is malfunctioning and I'm not certain of my exact coordinates. I need more time to navigate back safely." "Negative, Doctor. We're tracking your approximate location through your radio transmissions. A rescue team is already en route. Maintain your position and wait for pickup." Sarah's heart sank. A rescue team would discover the mother and cub and everything would change. The creatures would become subjects for study, rather than partners in cooperation. The delicate trust that had been building between species would be shattered by human protocols and procedures. The mother seemed to sense the urgency of the situation. She began making rapid gestures toward a cluster of crystal formations in the distance, communicating something important. Sarah realized the mother was showing her where her people lived, where the rest of her species was hiding. Understanding dawned on Sarah. The mother wasn't just asking for help with the energy crisis. She was offering to take Sarah to meet her entire community. It was an unprecedented invitation, a chance for humanity to experience true first contact, based on mutual respect and cooperation, rather than scientific observation and control. Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She gathered her most essential equipment and followed the mother toward the distant crystal formations. If her team was going to find her, at least they would find her in the context of peaceful contact rather than secret violation of protocols. As they traveled, the cub showed remarkable improvement. The little creature was now able to walk short distances, though it still tired easily. Its color-changing spots were pulsing with healthy rhythms, and it had begun making small sounds in response to its mother's calls. The journey took them through landscapes unlike anything Sarah had seen on the planet. The mother led her along paths that seemed to flow with the natural energy fields, avoiding areas of high interference and following routes where the electromagnetic environment was stable. After several hours of travel, they reached the mother's community, and Sarah's breath was taken away by what she saw. Hidden within a valley surrounded by properly functioning crystal formations was a settlement that was clearly the work of an advanced civilization. The structures were grown rather than built, shaped from the same crystalline materials as the energy management system, but formed into elegant curves that seemed to flow naturally from the landscape. Gardens of alien plants created beautiful patterns that Sarah realized were actually functional components of the settlement's energy distribution system. Most incredible of all were the people themselves. Dozens of creatures like the mother moved through the settlement with obvious intelligence and purpose. They wore simple accessories that seemed to enhance their natural energy absorption abilities, and they communicated with each other using complex combinations of sounds, gestures, and bioluminescent displays. When the mother appeared with Sarah and the recovered cub, the entire community gathered to witness this historic moment. There was no fear or aggression in their response, only curiosity and what appeared to be cautious hope. Sarah realized she was looking at a civilization that had lost its technology, but not its wisdom. A people who had adapted to their reduced circumstances with grace and dignity. They had been slowly dying because they couldn't repair their life support systems, but they had maintained their culture and their compassion. The mother presented Sarah to what appeared to be an elder of the community, an older creature whose color-changing spots had taken on permanent patterns that seemed to indicate age and wisdom. Through careful gestures and the mother's translation, Sarah began to understand that this elder had been hoping for exactly this kind of meeting. They had known that other intelligent species might eventually arrive on their world. The elder had instructed their people to be ready for contact, to approach any visitors with openness and trust rather than fear and suspicion. As Sarah stood in the center of this alien community, surrounded by beings who had chosen to trust humanity's good intentions, she realized that she was witnessing the most important moment in human history. This wasn't just first contact. This was the beginning of a true partnership between civilizations. But she also knew that her own people were probably only hours away from finding her. Soon she would have to explain everything she had done and convince her team that cooperation was better than control. The alien settlement was a marvel of organic technology and social cooperation. As Sarah moved through the community with the mother and cub, she observed how every aspect of their society was designed around harmony with their environment and each other. The elder, whose name Sarah learned was something like Resonance of Dawn, based on the tonal patterns and light displays used to identify them, welcomed Sarah with a formal ceremony that was both beautiful and deeply moving. The entire community gathered in a circular formation, and each member contributed a unique sound and light pattern that combined into a complex symphony of communication. Sarah realized she was witnessing a form of collective consciousness, not in the sense of shared thoughts, but as a deliberately created harmony of individual voices. Each person maintained their unique identity while contributing to a greater whole that was more than the sum of its parts. Through patient communication involving the mother as translator, the elder explained their people's history. They had once been a spacefaring civilization with technology that allowed them to reshape entire worlds to support life. But their home star had begun to die, forcing them to evacuate to this distant planet that their explorers had prepared centuries earlier. The journey had been successful, but the solar storm that damaged their energy management system had come at the worst possible time. They had lost contact with other survivor groups, and without the ability to maintain their technology, they were slowly reverting to a pre-technological existence. Most tragically, their young were dying because they couldn't adapt to the disrupted energy environment quickly enough. Each loss was not just a personal tragedy, but a threat to their species' survival. Sarah worked frantically to understand their technology, while keeping one ear on her radio for signs of the approaching rescue team. The alien energy management system was incredibly sophisticated, using quantum field manipulation principles that human science was only beginning to understand. But Sarah's training in xenobiology gave her insights that pure engineers might have missed. The technology wasn't just artificial, it was biointegrated, designed to work in harmony with the natural electromagnetic biology of the alien species. This meant that repairs couldn't just restore function, they had to restore harmony. The breakthrough came when Sarah realized that her portable fusion generator could do more than just replace a damaged component. By modifying its output frequency to match the natural pattern she had observed in healthy members of the species, she could create a template that would help the entire system remember its proper function. Working with several of the aliens who had retained technical knowledge, Sarah began implementing her solution. It was dangerous work, requiring her to interface her human technology directly with alien systems that operated on principles she only partially understood. The mother and her cub stayed close during this work, and Sarah realized that their presence was not just emotional support. The cub's biology, damaged and then healed by Sarah's intervention, provided a perfect example of how the energy fields should interact with their species' natural processes. As Sarah made the final connections, the transformation was immediate and dramatic. The crystal formations throughout the valley began to pulse with renewed energy, their interference patterns smoothing into the natural harmonies that supported life. But the most beautiful change was in the people themselves. Their color-changing spots began to synchronize across the entire community, creating waves of pattern and light that flowed from person to person like visual music. The young ones who had been weakening began to show immediate improvement, their natural energy absorption returning to normal levels. The celebration that followed was unlike anything Sarah had ever experienced. The entire community expressed their gratitude through a collective display of light and sound that was both celebration and communication. Sarah understood that she was being formally adopted into their society, given a place and a name in their collective harmony. But the celebration was interrupted by the sound of human aircraft approaching the valley. Sarah's radio crackled with Commander Walsh's voice, sharp with concern and authority. "Dr. Chen, we have your position. We're coming in for immediate extraction. Respond if you can hear this." Sarah looked around at the alien community, at the mother and cub who had started this entire adventure, at the elder who had welcomed her with such trust. She realized that this moment would define not just her own future, but the future of human-alien relations. The aliens gathered around her, their expressions showing concern, but not fear. They had trusted her completely, and now they were trusting her to handle the arrival of more humans. The elder approached and communicated something that Sarah understood as a question. Would these new humans be friends like Sarah, or would they be different? Sarah made the most important decision of her life. Instead of trying to hide what had happened or minimize the significance of the contact, she activated her radio and spoke with complete honesty. "Commander Walsh, this is Dr. Chen. I need you to approach very slowly and follow my exact instructions. I have made contact with an intelligent alien species, and they are peaceful and cooperative. Any aggressive actions could destroy the most important opportunity in human history." The radio was silent for a long moment. Then Walsh's voice came back, carefully controlled but obviously shocked. "Dr. Chen, confirm your last transmission. Did you say intelligent alien species?" "Confirmed, Commander. I am currently in their settlement and I have been working with them to solve a critical survival problem. They have welcomed us as potential partners, but this situation requires extreme care and sensitivity." Sarah could hear background chatter over the radio as her team processed this information. She knew that protocols existed for this situation, but those protocols had been written by people who had never imagined the reality of meeting beings who approached contact with such openness and trust. The aircraft appeared over the valley, and Sarah watched the aliens' reaction carefully. There was curiosity and some nervousness, but no panic or aggression. The elder stepped forward and made a gesture that Sarah had learned, meant peaceful intentions and welcome. Sarah realized that this moment was the culmination of everything she had learned about the difference between human and alien approaches to contact. Her own species' protocols emphasized caution, control, and maintaining advantage. But the aliens had chosen a path of openness, trust, and mutual aid. As the human aircraft settled into the valley, Sarah stood between two civilizations at one of the most crucial moments in galactic history. The choices made in the next few hours would determine whether humanity became known as a species that could cooperate and share, or as one that conquered and controlled. The mother and cub stood beside her, living proof that cooperation was possible. The elder waited patiently to greet these new humans with the same trust they had shown Sarah. And Sarah herself stood as the bridge between worlds, carrying the hopes of both species for a future built on understanding rather than dominance. Commander Walsh emerged from the aircraft with 3 other team members, all of them moving with the careful precision of people following first contact protocols. Sarah could see the mixture of excitement and apprehension on their faces as they took in the alien settlement and the beings who had gathered to observe their arrival. The moment of first visual contact between the human team and the alien community was electric with possibility. The elder stepped forward, moving with deliberate slowness to avoid any actions that might be interpreted as threatening. Their color changing, spots displayed a pattern that Sarah had learned indicated peaceful greetings and welcome. Commander Walsh stopped several meters away, his hand resting on his equipment belt in a gesture that was probably unconscious but clearly visible to the observant aliens. Sarah quickly stepped between them, realizing that this interaction could go wrong in a dozen different ways. "Commander, these people have been incredibly generous and trusting with me," Sarah said carefully. "The individual approaching us is their leader, and they're offering a formal welcome. I recommend we respond with equal courtesy and openness." Walsh looked at Sarah, then at the alien elder, his military training clearly warring with the unprecedented nature of the situation. "Dr. Chen, you understand that you've violated every protocol we have for this type of situation. We need to establish secure communication with Earth immediately and follow established procedures." The elder seemed to understand the tension in the human group, even though they couldn't understand the words. They made a gesture that Sarah recognized as an invitation to communicate, then began to create symbols in the dirt similar to what the mother had done earlier. Dr. Martinez, the team's xenopsychologist, stepped forward with obvious fascination. "Commander, they're demonstrating abstract symbolic communication. This is clear evidence of advanced intelligence." The elder's drawing showed the same star, charts that the mother had created, but with additional elements that depicted multiple species working together across different worlds. The message was unmistakable. These people had experience with cooperative contact between civilizations. Sarah realized this was her chance to explain everything that had happened. "Commander, they're not just intelligent, they're refugees from another star system, and they've been dying because their life support technology was damaged in a solar storm. I've been working with them to repair their systems, and it's working." To demonstrate, Sarah led the group to where the cub was playing with several other young aliens. The little one that had been dying just days earlier was now healthy and active, its spots pulsing with vibrant energy patterns as it interacted with its playmates. "This cub was dying when its mother brought it to me for help," Sarah explained. "Everything we've accomplished here has been through cooperation and mutual aid. They trusted us enough to ask for help, and we've proven that humans can be worthy of that trust." Dr. Martinez was taking rapid notes and recordings, her scientific excitement obvious. "The implications are staggering. We're looking at a post-scarcity civilization that values cooperation over competition. Their entire social structure is built around mutual support." But Commander Walsh remained focused on protocols and procedures. "Regardless of the outcomes, Dr. Chen, you've made unauthorized contact with an alien species. Earth Command needs to be informed immediately, and we need to establish formal diplomatic procedures." The elder seemed to sense the nature of the discussion. They approached Sarah and communicated through gestures and light patterns, asking what appeared to be questions about the new humans and their intentions. Sarah found herself in the position of having to explain human bureaucracy and military hierarchies to a species that seemed to operate on consensus and mutual cooperation. The contrast was stark and somewhat embarrassing. "They want to know if you're here as friends or as authorities," Sarah translated. "They don't really have a concept of chain of command the way we do. They make decisions collectively, based on what's best for everyone." The mother and her cub approached the group, and Sarah saw an opportunity to bridge the gap between human caution and alien openness. "Commander, I'd like you to meet the individual who started all of this. She trusted me with her dying child. And together we've saved not just one life, but potentially an entire species." The mother looked directly at Commander Walsh and made the same trusting gesture she had made with Sarah, gently touching his hand with her paw. The effect on the battle-hardened military officer was immediate and profound. Sarah could see his entire perspective shifting as he realized he was being personally welcomed by a sentient being who was choosing to trust him. "My God," Walsh whispered. They're really people, aren't they?" The elder took advantage of this moment of connection to lead the human group on a tour of their settlement. They showed the humans their organic architecture, their energy, management systems, and most importantly, their children who were now thriving thanks to Sarah's repairs. Dr. Martinez documented everything with growing excitement, while Chief Engineer Patterson became deeply engaged in understanding the alien technology. Dr. Chen, the integration between their biology and their technology is incredible. It's like they've evolved specifically to work in harmony with their artificial systems. But it was the human team's interaction with the alien children that really changed everything. The young ones approached the humans with curiosity and playfulness, sharing their bioluminescent displays and treating the visitors like welcomed guests rather than strangers to be feared. Commander Walsh knelt down to interact with the cub that Sarah had saved, watching in amazement as the little creature showed off its healthy energy patterns. This one would have died without intervention. Within hours, Sarah confirmed. And they're not the only ones. This entire community has been slowly dying because they couldn't repair their systems after the solar storm. But now that we've shown them how to integrate human technology with their own, they have a real chance at survival. The elder returned to the group and began a more complex communication session, using combinations of drawings, sounds, and light patterns to convey a detailed message. Sarah worked to translate, with help from Dr. Martinez, who was quickly learning to recognize some of the communication patterns. "They're offering us something incredible," Sarah said, her voice filled with awe. "They want to share their technology with us, teach us how to live in harmony with our environments the way they do. But more than that, they're offering us membership in what they call the Harmony of Species, a network of civilizations that work together across the galaxy." Commander Walsh looked around at the alien settlement, at the peaceful and welcoming people, at the evidence of cooperation and mutual aid that surrounded them. Sarah could see him weighing protocols against possibilities, military caution against humanitarian opportunity. "Dr. Chen," he said finally, "I need you to help me compose a message to Earth Command. We're going to need to completely rewrite our first contact protocols, because what we found here is better than anything we ever imagined possible." The mother approached and gently touched both Sarah and Commander Walsh, including him in the gesture of connection and trust that had started everything. In that moment, Sarah realized that humanity had passed its first real test as a galactic species. They had chosen cooperation over conquest, understanding over exploitation, and trust over fear. The implications would reshape not just their relationship with this one species, but their entire approach to exploring the galaxy and meeting other civilizations. 1 year later, Sarah stood in the same valley where she had first met the mother and her dying cub. But everything had changed. The alien settlement had grown into a thriving city that seamlessly blended human and alien technology. Crystal formations now worked in harmony with human power systems, creating an energy network that was more efficient and sustainable than anything either species could have built alone. The cub, now a healthy young adult with spots that sparkled like jewels, bounded up to greet Sarah with the enthusiastic energy of youth. The mother followed more sedately, her own patterns showing the contentment of a parent whose child had not only survived, but thrived beyond all expectations. But the transformation went far deeper than just technology and population growth. The partnership between humans and the Kepler beings, as they had come to be known on Earth, had revolutionized both civilizations' understanding of what cooperation could accomplish. Dr. Martinez, now serving as Earth's first interspecies communication specialist, approached with a data pad full of reports from similar contact situations across the galaxy. "Sarah, you need to see the latest reports from the Harmony Network. 17 different species have requested human assistance with various problems, all because they've heard about what happened here." Sarah smiled as she read through the requests. Worlds facing ecological collapse, civilizations struggling with resource distribution, species dealing with the aftermath of natural disasters. All of them had heard that humans were uniquely willing to help others solve their problems. even when there was no immediate benefit to humanity. It's remarkable, Dr. Martinez continued. We're being invited to join collaborative projects across half the galaxy, not because we're the most advanced species, but because we're apparently the most willing to actually help. Commander Walsh, now serving as Earth's Director of Interspecies Relations, joined their conversation. The diplomatic implications are staggering. Instead of having to fight our way through space or negotiate complex treaties, we're being welcomed as partners by civilizations that are thousands of years ahead of us technologically. Sarah looked around at the bustling activity in the valley. Human and Kepler scientists worked side by side, developing new technologies that neither species could have imagined alone. Children of both species played together, learning each other's languages and ways of thinking. Most remarkably, hybrid technologies were emerging that combined human innovation with Kepler harmony principles. The mother approached and began one of her complex communications, now easily understood by all the humans present, thanks to the translation systems they had developed together. She was telling Sarah about the latest reports from other Kepler communities across the galaxy. The solar storm damage that had threatened this community had been affecting Kepler settlements on dozens of worlds. But with human engineering assistance, they had not only repaired the damage but improved their systems beyond their original capabilities. For the first time in generations, their population was growing instead of declining. She's saying that their elders have declared this the beginning of a new age, Dr. Martinez translated. They're calling it the time of renewed hope. But perhaps the most significant change was in humanity itself. The success of the Kepler partnership had transformed Earth's approach to space exploration and colonization. Instead of claiming uninhabited worlds, humans were now actively seeking out struggling civilizations to help and partner with. The Harmony of Species Network had welcomed humanity not as junior members to be tolerated, but as essential partners whose unique talents made the entire network stronger. Human adaptability, problem-solving creativity, and willingness to take risks to help others had proven to be exactly what many struggling civilizations needed. Sarah's portable computer chimed with an incoming message from Earth. She opened it to find a video call from her old university colleagues, their faces showing excitement and awe. Sarah, you need to see the applications we're getting for xenobiology programs, Professor Kim said. Every bright young person on Earth wants to follow in your footsteps and become a first contact specialist. You've inspired an entire generation to see the galaxy as a place to help rather than conquer. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah. Her violation of every first contact protocol had become the model for a completely new approach to interspecies relations. Earth Command had literally rewritten their procedures based on her experience, emphasizing cooperation and mutual aid over caution and control. As the call ended, Sarah felt a gentle touch on her hand. She looked down to see the original cub, now grown, making the same trusting gesture its mother had made all those months ago. But this time, the gesture carried additional meaning communicated through complex light patterns. She's asking if you'd be willing to help her with something, Dr. Martinez translated, grinning. She's pregnant and she wants you to be there when her cubs are born. Sarah laughed, feeling tears of joy in her eyes. Tell her I'd be honored. The elder of the community approached, moving with the dignity that came from having lived through both the darkest and brightest periods of their species' recent history. Through patient communication, they shared something that made Sarah's heart soar with pride and humility. The Harmony Network had officially recognized humans as what they called life-bringers, species whose presence in the galaxy made life better for everyone they encountered. It was a rare designation, held by only a few species out of thousands in the network. But what moved Sarah most was the elder's personal message. They told her that the mother had taught her cub to understand that its life had been saved not by technology or medicine alone, but by the willingness of one being to care about the suffering of another, even across the vast distances between species and worlds. As the twin moons rose over the thriving settlement, Sarah watched human and Kepler families gathering together for their evening meal. Children of both species played games that combined elements from both cultures, creating something entirely new and beautiful. The mother approached one final time, carrying a small device that pulsed with gentle light. Through gesture and pattern, she explained that it was a communicator that would allow Sarah to stay in contact with their community no matter where in the galaxy her work might take her. But more than that, it was a symbol of the bond that had been forged between their species through one simple act, a desperate mother's trust in the compassion of a stranger, and that stranger's willingness to risk everything to help. Sarah accepted the device and realized that she was holding something far more valuable than any technology. She was holding proof that the universe was filled with potential friends, and that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or their conquest capabilities. It was their willingness to see a suffering child and say, "I will help," regardless of the consequences to themselves. As she looked up at the star-filled sky, Sarah knew that somewhere out there, other human teams were having similar encounters, building similar partnerships, and proving over and over again that the galaxy was big enough for everyone to thrive together. The dying cub had lived, and in saving one small life, humanity had found its true place among the stars.